Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as you know, we put Ghana first. This morning, we're assessing the progress of Ghana's fight against the coronavirus pandemic and asking questions about the challenges and how they may be resolved. What is the progress report? That's the question. Now, after the lockdown was lifted, there are people who are expecting some extreme measures because Ghana's infection rate has surpassed 2,000. Will anything dramatic, extreme happen? Didn't the president say that we should expect his next address, the 9th, to contain measures and steps towards easing the current situation? We will also interrogate the politics of abandoned hospitals and the promise of 94 new hospitals in this year. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. I'm Samson Ladi Anyanini. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, as you know always, we put Ghana first. Now my take. I title it, Corona Chaos. Disregard for law threatens the fight. The first most important weapon for the end COVID-19 war in Ghana was a 5-page piece of paper, Imposition of Restrictions Act, passed by Parliament to empower the President to issue orders reasonably necessary for our safety and health. Yes, it is primarily for our individual protection and collective safety that some 8 executive instruments, EIs, have so far been issued. The pandemic's devastating chaos has meant what was lawful when you went to bed may become unlawful the next morning. Some citizens could not afford a fine of 13,000 cedis, have been thrown into jail for 4 years for going to church. A couple of weeks ago, police informed us over 400 people had been arrested and faced a similar fate. They were not arrested for stealing. They only stepped out of their homes to go about what had been their normal, legit business. Yet, others got into trouble for parties celebrating a birthday. We advocated, and now on the back of the power for EI 61, i.e. the Public Health Act 2012, a directive has been issued to make wearing the mask compulsory. It may not come with criminal sanctions, but guidance for its proper and hygienic use is critical. In his 8th broadcast, the President repeated his pleas for full compliance and issued a stern warning that those who by their actions breach the lawful measures and compromise our safety will not be spared. He pleaded for collective patriotic support to deal ruthlessly with such conduct. Traditional authorities have given support to police their areas of jurisdiction in the interest of their people. the Ochihene placed a ban on palace court hearings. But yesterday, there was an installation of a paramount chief in the eastern region. The videos show a jubilant crowd with state security protecting a clear breach of the president's lawful orders against public gatherings, festivals, workshops, political rallies, religious gatherings, etc. On top of the violation, the people of Akwapim were put in danger as there was no observation of social distancing and some didn't wear a mask. This comes at a time the EC did something that smacks of disregard for the same law, even after a court gave an injunction against the non-exempt institution. The High Court temporarily stopped it from conducting a national workshop for its officers in preparation for possible elections in December because of a suit asserting the workshop was an End COVID-19 Prohibited Act. MP Sam George also resorted to an equally unlawful process to enforce the court order by leading a crowd to prevent what he alleged was a relocation of the workshop stopped by the court. What do all these acts, smacking of impunity and disregard for law and administration of justice, ordinarily communicate to the ordinary citizens? The police who arrested violators got some paying hefty monetary fines and got some in jail. How will they explain their subsequent actions to the over 400 citizens they are prosecuting? Will the president or government deal with the latest violation by merely condemning it? Ghana's constitution in Article 17 declares that, quote, all persons shall be equal before the law, and ignore all the claims that suggest that a judge did something wrong in the EC's injunction. Ignore the political interpretation that suggests that something went amiss. When you read my take later, I'll indicate to you that relocating an unlawful act does not change the fact that it remains unlawful. If you have an issue against a court order because you think it is invalid or is made in error, the right approach is to go back to the court to set it aside. This is my take. Let me welcome my guests this morning for our assessment of the progress so far and the challenges. And I seek to find out, because you have been asking, are we expecting extreme measures as Ghana's infections, not infection rate, I have said infection rate, the number of persons infected surpassed 2,000. In fact, we understand that soon, when the process or the Ghana Health Service portal is updated or the president speaks to us, we should expect that the number will go up close to about 1,000 more. But there are interesting and very good stories about the recoveries that are going on and the contact tracing that is in an advanced stage. Of course, we know that the testing centers have now multiplied, therefore giving Ghana a chance to do a far better job than its peers within the sub-region or in Africa. So we will deal with those issues and also ask the questions about the politics of the abandoned hospitals and the promise of 94 new hospitals in this year alone. My guest this morning, Dr. Patrick Abuaje, is Director General, Ghana Health Service. Dr. Justice Youngson is General Secretary, the Ghana Medical Association. We'll be joined on the phone by Kwame Sapong-Esedu, pharmacist and fellow, Ghana Center for Democratic Development, CDD Ghana. But we are also interested in knowing how you assess Ghana's progress so far, particularly after the lockdown was lifted. So we give you the opportunity first, send in your messages, but we should open the phone lines for you to also make your contributions. We want to hear from you so that those at the forefront will answer your questions. What are some of the challenges you have? What are some of the difficulties you encounter as a result of the measures in containing the spread of the pandemic? Let's begin by listening to Dr. Patrick Aboagye when he addressed the nation and told us about the numbers.
As of this morning, the final count that we have is that we have 1,671 cases. Of this, 563 has come from general surveillance, which is those who fall ill and approach the hospital and they are tested. 105 still remains part of the earlier quarantine, 10 from the quarantine in Tamale, and those we had from the enhanced tracing. That is the group that we actually went out to look for. We found 1,113, bringing our total to 1,671. Currently, about 1,461 are well or no symptoms and are responding very well to treatment. We have about 6 who are moderately to critically ill, 2 at UGMC, 3 in Ghana East, and 1 in Kolebu as we speak today. All the other parts of the country, we do not have any critical case there. For recoveries, we have recorded 188 of all these people have recovered. And we are hoping that there are more waiting for discharge, awaiting their second test to be discharged.
Right. So Dr. Patrick Aboagye is here himself. We will get to update ourselves on Ghana's situation. As you know by now, we now have confirmed 2,074. I don't know if we have gone beyond that yet. And then we have 17 deaths and we have 212 recoveries. We will deal with those shortly. But as we begin, we want to take your calls. We want to know your circumstance where you are, particularly if you have somebody who has come into contact or who perhaps is being quarantined, or you have gone through this process yourself as quarantine yourself, and you have something that may be useful to help us assess Ghana's progress in the fight so far, or enlist the challenges so that it will guide those at the forefront in managing this situation in the way forward. The number to call, or the numbers to call, are 0302 2211 691. You can call that number. 0302 211 691. 691. Or you can call 0302 211 692. 692. All right, so let's first take our first caller, Kofi Usu. Kofi Usu, where are you calling from and what do you have to share with us? Hello, Kofi.
Hello. Good morning.
Morning, Kofi. We can hear you. Where are you calling from and what do you have to share with us?
Yeah, from Kumasi.
Great.
Yes, what I want to say is that, yes, I know the leaders are doing a fantastic job. I traveled to Chicago and then returned on 11th March. Now, on 11th March, when we came, there was nothing from the government on us. So we came home together with my wife. Then we went to church. Then the president announced. So we decided to stay home for 2 weeks, self-quarantine ourselves. We did that, and then some numbers came. We called. Fortunately, a lady picked the number, the call, and then directed that some people will come to us. Then the president said, all those who travel between 3rd March should call so that they could be tested. I made effort, and I called. So the immigration officers came to my house on 8th April, took my sample, sputum, took it on the 9th. As I speak to you now, Samson, I have not heard anything. The mental torture I go through every day. And the last...
So your sample was taken on the 9th of...
On the 9th of April.
9th of April.
And when the president spoke when we were about 60,000, he said there was a backlog of about 18,000.
Okay.
Now we've hit over 100,000.
All right. So,
and I still don't have results.
All right. So, Kofi, you are anxious to know your status. You and your wife?
It's so...
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know.
Thank you, Kofi. Thank you very much. And let's get to Promise. Promise is calling us from La Paz here in Accra. Hello, Promise. Hello, Promise. What do you have to share with us?
I think the problem about us is about the market women. You see, they watch TV always. But since when authorities go to the market to try to let them why they should enforce the social distance, they keep retaliating. The last time I saw a video from Medina. And I think that we citizens are making the work difficult for our authorities to handle. So I think my contribution is, if we are watching this woman as with you, take our time, do what is necessary. We shouldn't wait for the numbers to go up before we become serious.
Thank you very much, Promise. Right. Your concern is about non-compliance, particularly in the market, non-compliance with social distancing and the measures that are supposed to be in place. So, Jeff, you're calling from Tamale. Jeff, what do you have to share with us?
Yes, what I have to share with you is that the protocol on social distancing is not adhered to in Tamale. There are areas all over, so I don't know what authorities are doing.
What do you mean by it's not adhered to?
You can see people more than 25. People more than 25 having amaria and going on in Tamale.
Okay.
When you get to the bars, more than 25.
I see.
Meanwhile, I heard the MC gave order that all bars should be closed. Meanwhile, they are still operating.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Now, the important thing to note is that there is no permission to hold an amaria like a wedding. There's no permission for it. The permission given for 25 participants maximum is for burials. Burials. It's not for anything. So if you want to do anything that is prohibited by the law, conferences, workshops, religious activities, festivals, all of those things, sporting activities, prohibited completely. It doesn't mean that you can do it with 25 people. Let's get that very clearly. Who is Trinity? Trinity, where are you calling us from? And what's your concern? Or what do you have to say?
Hello?
Yes, Trinity, you are calling from Hafasini. What do you have to share with us?
No, I'm calling from...
Yes, go ahead.
The latest figures we had.
You are calling from where? You are calling from where?
Hafasini.
Hafasini, okay.
Yes. The latest figures we had as of 3 or so days ago, are they still from the backlog of cases the president talked about? And two, if that be the case, does that mean we are not having new infections? I think no new cases are being recorded. And three, why are we still not getting daily record of cases? Because if you should go by the model, then the graph or so that you talk about, how are we then able to draw the graph to be able to ascertain whether we are flattening a curve or we are peaking or we are not? So I think the daily reported cases will help us be able to draw the graph that experts talk about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Trinity calling us from Hafasini. And whilst we wait to take just a couple more, we just want to have your ideas of what you are thinking and what is going on with you before those who are at the forefront of managing all of this begin the discussion. Vincent from Nkrakan, Eastern Region. Hello, Vincent.
Yeah, hello, Samson.
Yes.
Yes, my problem is that in my district here in Kraken here, it's under Yilo Kobo in the Eastern Region. There is a very big market here on Thursdays and Mondays. But if you look at the market, I don't know what our...
Okay, we seem to have lost Vincent there.
Yeah, something I'm around.
Okay, so what you're saying is that there is no compliance with the protocols in the markets.
There's no protocols in the market. We are not seeing the DCE in the market. They should come. We have other schools around. So they can do the satellite market and move the food, the sellers and some of the people around to trade places. Okay. But they are not doing. So they should come and do the things for us.
All right. Thank you. Jabal. Okay, Jabal, you are calling from Tamale. You should be my last caller. Yes, Jabal. The rest of you can send us messages and we'll share them with the experts here. Yes, Jabal.
Yes, Samson, I'm calling from Tamale. A gentleman called from Tamale called Jeff, and he
said that the protocols are not being observed, particularly when it comes to...
I disagree with him.
Okay.
On that score. Yes, nationwide there have been infractions, and those he's mentioning are the general infractions that normally happen at other places.
Okay.
But with the general population, I must say there's general compliance. So it is not very true that the people of Tamale are not adhering to it. Otherwise, the security agencies and authorities would have taken that up, and you would have heard about it.
All right, thank you, Jabal. Thank you, Jabal. So we'll take, I said my last, this should be my last caller then. Alfred, you are calling from London?
How are you?
I'm good, thanks for asking. Yes, what do you have to share with us, Alfred?
Just a quick one. I've just been watching you and I see your take and the video that came up with the social distancing. What I want to say is the very people that are supposed to make sure the social distancing is working, because the president cannot be everywhere. There are certain people in certain areas that have to observe and make sure whatever the president has come up to be adhered to. It's very pathetic to see that chiefs are organizing this with support of the security. If this thing is happening, I don't know how you can tell something to regulate to social distance. This is the eyes of everybody. The first eyes that's supposed to be are flattening the laws.
All right.
So I'm sorry. The authorities must really deal with it.
All right. Thank you, Alfred. Thank you, Alfred. Thank you very much. Okay, so like I said, all of you, please hold on. You can send us messages about whatever you want to share with us as far as Ghana's fight of the pandemic is concerned, and we will let our guests respond to them for you. Now, I said I'll start with Dr. Abuaje, but let me go to the phone lines and talk to Dr. Augustina Angelina Silverkin, who is a lecturer, Department of Theoretical and Applied Biology, KNUST, and research scientist and virologist at the Kumasi Center, the KCCR. Thank you very much, Doc, for joining us. Great. Okay, so let's begin with what you must have heard some of the callers, practically complain about. The majority of the complaints are about non-compliance with this protocols, particularly social distancing, more particularly in the markets. Why do you think people don't seem to want to comply fully. And what are the risks if this doesn't go on correctly?
Indeed, sometimes, so for those of us who do the testing in the lab, we get to the lab, we do our testing, and then we come out of the lab and we see what people are doing, and we are like, we honestly don't know what is going on. But I'm just thinking that maybe it boils down to education. People assume that the virus is somewhere, or some way, somehow, the virus has vamoosed into thin air. I mean, I have heard people make interesting comments pointing to the fact that as soon as the restrictions on movement some way, somehow were lifted, it meant that the virus has also gone somewhere, vamoosed into thin air. I don't know whether people are waiting to see people dying, rushing to the hospitals. But remember that we don't have such very strong health system. So I don't think we even want to go to that level or get to that level. I mean, we have very limited ventilators, and I keep on asking myself, of course, the number of people who even survive on when put on ventilators. So maybe education hasn't gone down very well. Do our people even understand what social distancing is and the effects this social distancing can make in limiting the spread of the virus? Have we also involved our local, people in our environment, in our communities, the local people, such as the chiefs, opinion leaders? When you go to the markets, they have queen mothers,
yes.
They have leaders, and honestly, I'm expecting to see that leadership role they have been played out very well during this time. I know that in the Ashanti region, I always comment the Ashanti region. We know that for some of the markets, honestly, they had to be closed down. For some other markets, they were given color codes. So, for example, they were given yellow, blue, I don't know the colors.
Yes.
So that if you had a yellow color, then it meant that
it's red, yellow, and green. Yeah.
Exactly. So you had designated days on which you had to go to the markets. But I know that definitely some people took advantage. Some people were doing their own things. I know that for some
faked it, and they were arrested.
Yes. So maybe people haven't really gotten the message very well. I have kept on saying that maybe we have been giving out a lot of information. Now our people have a baseline, a foundation, which is excellent. You always need to give out information. But then I think on top of the information, we may want to be doing education. I mean, I always hear this particular advert and I don't even want to listen to it. It goes like, don't touch your face. I know it is difficult in the local language. Meaning, but if you know that the thing is difficult, then why don't you explain why it is difficult? And look, with these millennials around, they always want to know why. So I think that we may want to, Ghana, we have done very, very well, but maybe we may want to re-strategize. We may want to add some levels in terms of education. And I'm sure that, and of course, involving our local chiefs, our opinion leaders, there's something known as local ownership. So that, for example, if that queen mother is the one spearheading this social distancing and even explaining, and what I also ask myself is that, do our people even know what 2 meters is? Do we know what 6 feet? We know that, if you stretch your hand, that's a meter. If the other one sitting close to you also stretches his or her hand, it is 2. Also a meter. So if we can go down to the very basics, I'm sure that our people will comply. And of course, if we show on screens, TV stations, show that, look, this is what is actually happening, I'm positive that people would adhere to all the things we have been
So as we know, actually the local government ministry is the one spearheading the alternate markets. and local authorities are supposed to strictly enforce that. Where the markets are crowded, they are supposed to ensure some sort of easing up of that market and create alternative places. So is it that the local authorities perhaps are not working in tandem with the medical experts to know that this has to be enforced? Is that what is going on? Because if you read the report, you hear a lot of people, even on social media, also complaining. They have gone to the markets and it doesn't appear anything is going on. People have spoken about their Boboloshi market and so on and so forth. What can the authorities do?
I think they may want to enforce, maybe add some level of enforcement. I don't know if we want to involve, of course, if people are not adhering to these measures, then we may rather add a level of enforcement. We may want to involve our security agencies, because look, every single body is at risk. I mean, I heard in one of the districts, the market women themselves, and I think we should also be promoting, talking about such heroes and heroines. I know that one particular district, the market women themselves actually enforced, or they have enforced the social distancing, even gone beyond social distancing, and they have added the wearing of masks, so that when you get to their market and you are not in mask, they will actually turn you away. I think we need every single hand on deck. We cannot leave this to only the local authorities to be doing everything. We have to own all the things we are doing, some of these mitigation strategies.
I'll get to Dr. Boadio right now, but can we look at this issue where Kofi Usu in Kumasi is not particularly happy about the fact that he and his wife, their samples were taken on the 9th of April, and they still don't have a word as to what their status is.
I mean, Samson, definitely, I share in their anxiety. I would have been very, very, very anxious. But a lot of factors may have resulted in this. Look, sometimes you receive samples and the samples are not well labeled. Sometimes they are not well closed. And the unfortunate thing is that now we are using sputum or nasal washes. And these samples go into a wide mouth container. And they need to be capped. They are screws. So that if they are not capped well, then the samples would be taken all right. But in transit, in transporting it to the lab, chances are that you may end up losing everything. And I mean, Ashanti region, usually when the regional health directorate is organizing meetings, they invite some of us. We take participants through some of these things, spelling out things out very well for them. So I would be anxious. And it is also possible that really the results may have actually been sent, but maybe it is sitting in somebody's email, because, you know, these are patient data, and you cannot just call me for me to tell you that, oh, you are negative or you are positive. We have a process. So our director would, for example, send the results to the region, and then the expectation is that the region will send all the results to the various districts. And sometimes it is possible the results may be sitting in somebody's email, where we have internet challenges. Some people are such that they don't check their emails on
so Doc, I'll return to you. Then we will start an assessment proper of the progress and the challenges. We have heard challenges that have been, mentioned, even from those at the front line and so on. We would like to know what challenges there are and what you take as the successes that have been made so far. But Dr. Boaji, if we can first look at the concerns that came in. Kofi also called first. His situation, Dr. Silver King, who I suspect will be the ones KCCR, they would have done the testing for him. What explanation do you have for people like that? He's not alone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Samson. Yes, we have similar explanation. I think the doctor mentioned some of the possible issues, but when samples are not appropriately taken, resampling is done. There's also a lot of emphasis on reporting positives. And communication may also have been a challenge. But I agree that it's possible that the results are there, and we should be able to look for his results. If it's been done, I should have it. And if I know his name, we'll be able to ensure that he gets his results. Usually, there are a lot of emphasis is placed.
He mentioned his name, Kofi Usu. But the thing is there not some protocol that would have, that at least you would have been contacted and told that your sample has gone through this process, this is where it is, you know, hold on, you should expect it within this period or that period. The anxiety may kill, you know.
Thank you. I think that's what I was getting to now. The protocol is that you get, the samples are sent to the lab, results are sent to the region, national level receive that is in, immediately the region gives it to the district where the person came from, a hospital that took the sample. Because of the nature of the situation, we want to have those who participate in taking the sample inform the person.
Okay.
And before we report. And that is why, like I keep telling you, that's why we delay in our publication of our results, especially in the early phases when there were few cases, which was very easy to say who is who.
All right.
So that's when we'll do. So I'm sure there have been some error in reporting or not being reached or whatever, but it's something that can be corrected.
Okay.
Easily. And because we push a lot more for the positive, and the tendency to ignore the negative, it's very likely that he's negative. That's
our caller from Half-Assini, Trinity, wanted to know whether or not what you have on the site now includes the backlog that the president spoke about, and he also asked to know about what we have stopped speaking about for a while now. Where are we in the curve? Which of the curves, I suppose you will ask.
That's a very, very technical question. Yes, yeah, we still have some backlog. And with the ramping up of our labs now, even now, I just got a message from the professor, they are doing that, and they don't have any backlog in Volta region and OT region where they are captive, where they cover.
Yeah.
We are closing the gap, but we still have some backlog, especially in Kumasi, KCCR, where the numbers are. But we're currently building capacity in Konfanochi and other places. So that number includes the backlog.
Okay.
And so you may have in a day reporting a sample of about 6,000 to 8,000. Definitely, that is not the day's collection. There are previous backlog that is in. But with the expansion of all our labs, we are hoping that by the end of next week, we should be able to report in real time.
All right, Dr. Hansen, the majority of the callers
just to add,
about the social distancing.
In terms of looking at the curve, maybe those are the things that we use in strategizing.
All right.
We also know when a sample is taken and when it's positive. So we are able to go back and look at samples taken on 24th. How many are positive? And that is what we plot to see where we are. And currently, we are not seeing any increase in this, and we are virtually stabilizing. That's why we are not too worried.
That's a good job. Now, Dr. Hansen, majority of the complaints were about lack of, compliance with the social distancing, protocols in markets. We've heard about food vendors and taxi drivers, who have also tested. How else do you think, we can go about the education to ensure strict compliance in the markets more particularly?
Well, I think that we need to do a quick assessment of the situation, which to a large extent is being done. But we need to bring a conclusion to that and then relook the approach to the social distancing and possibly include some enforcement measures. Everybody
Any
seems
specifics you are looking at?
Yes, everybody seems to be talking about the markets, but you know, the business districts sometimes may deceive us. When you go there, it's so clear, but in the communities themselves, the social distancing is also not being observed. So the local authorities, I think, have the onus now, and possibly we should involve the security agencies to ensure that people adhere to these measures, and to an extent start bringing in the courts so that people can also start facing some of the penalties as spelled out in the laws. Without that, it looks like everybody thinks that it's the usual, business is going on and nobody cares. It's difficult, but we need to make efforts. So for example, this bit about markets, for example, where some regions, let's say Ashanti, they are trying to sort of have some different days for the different people to come in. So through the color codes. Central region, Kaswa is trying to expand the markets, i.e. moving some of the traders from the traditional markets to school parks, stuff like that. We should look at some of these measures and ensure that we make them mandatory throughout the country, especially the two epic centers, Accra, Kumasi, as in Greater Accra and Ashanti region. Of course, there are emerging places like Eastern as well, where we need to send our experiences from Accra and let that be seen to be bearing some fruit in those regions, so that we don't have a situation where by the time...
What about Eastern?
No, it's an emerging in terms of... So we started off with Ashanti and Greater Accra being the places with most of the numbers. Now they are followed by Eastern in terms of the numbers.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, that we should not allow those regions who are also beginning to record cases to get to the levels of Greater Accra and Ashanti. Else then we have a higher risk.
What we have just witnessed Friday and yesterday, what can the impact be?
I mean,
you have crowds in an installation process, and no social distancing, majority no masks.
You see, sometimes we should
just
take...
violating the law and being protected by the police to do so.
We should take advantage of situations like that and deal with, in quotes, the people who are influential. And that will serve as a warning to the rest of us. Whoever gave the order to the police, assuming without admitting that the police were notified and they went there to give protection, right from the IGP to the lowest person, people should start having questions to answer for flouting the president's directives. At the local level, I don't know the extent of involvement of, say, the local community, i.e. the district assembly, I mean the administrative structures. People should answer questions. The National and Regional House of Chiefs themselves, they should start asking themselves questions. And then, of course, the institution in that locality, the traditional institution, should also be brought to task. Because we cannot allow things of this nature to happen when we are all trying to fight a common enemy.
You said they should be made to answer questions.
Yes, of course.
For flouting the president's directives.
Yes.
You are a lawyer, so you know that the president's directives by way of an EI are backed with the force of law. They are law, so to speak. So they have not just flouted directives. They have breached law. Is it just answering questions, or
let me expand.
What is happening? What is happening to preachers who are being arrested here and there is the same thing that should happen to them.
Samson, let me expand quickly. You see, when I started, I said the very influential people should be brought to book for all of us to learn lessons from. So by saying that they should be made to answer questions, what I meant is that they should be taken through the due process, and where they are found to have formally breached the rules, the exact punishment as spelled out, it probably is the maximum, should be given out. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Because you see, we cannot continue this way. People feel that life is okay with us.
You think that sends very bad signals to everybody else who is watching?
Technically so. That is it. Because you see, this is the traditional authority. We expect that they will also be showing leadership. So if they are also breaching their rules, but of course, we don't have all the facts at our hands. This is just based on what we have seen. And that's why I'm saying that clearly on the evidence as we have seen, on the surface, there's a presumption that these things have been done wrongly. That's why I said we should look into the circumstances, and those who ought to be brought to book, we bring them to book for some sanity to prevail. You see, the problem in all this is this, or the biggest risk here is that in our context, the Ghanaian context, what we have seen is that there are a lot of asymptomatic people in the system.
Asymptomatic means what?
These are people who have the infection. Technically speaking, you don't see any obvious signs of illness. Maybe at some point it could happen because as the disease progresses, depending on how things work out for a particular patient, it could move from mild to moderate to severe or even critical. But within this asymptomatic phase, where they are not showing any symptoms, so they don't have a cough, they don't have a fever, all the things that we've been preaching about, they don't have them. So you see them, and on the surface, it's just like any of us sitting here. So when you bunch up in the numbers as we saw in your clips, you end up, and when I saw the clips, I'm not too sure that I saw even just a cross section 10% of the people in mask. I don't think so. So what it means is that
let's have that video footage again from Ekwaping where the installation was happening. So
what it means is that all these people, if there are asymptomatic cases amongst them, they are actually you can see. There's one or two people on the surface you can see. You know, so clearly there's a risk out there for everybody involved, including the people who are being installed as chiefs themselves. There's a risk. The leaders of the community, i.e. the traditional authority, as we see them, they are also not
in any holding hands.
Yes,
the very things that
we are talking about. And I don't know how long this procession was. I don't know. But clearly, these are the sort of things that, because let's not forget that we have community spread.
Right.
So whether we like it or not, the disease is with us in our communities. And we cannot pretend that some communities are exempted from anything. You could even have imported cases from other regions. I don't know, people who may have moved from Accra or elsewhere to be part of it. And these are the sort of things we are all trying to talk about.
Okay, so very briefly, Dr. Boaji, so we are watching you guys do a very difficult job. And you're receiving a lot of praise, not locally also, but even internationally. When you see something like this, what does it say to you for the efforts and the work you are putting in?
Yeah, thank you very much. It worries us a lot because the success of this exercise does not only depend on us. It also mostly depends on how people comply with these measures. Otherwise, it's like having a drum with a hole in the bottom. As you pour in, it pours out. So we want to really ensure. And I just saw that nose mask is, you call it nose mask, not mouth mask. And a lot of people who are wearing masks are actually not covering their nose. And I think that is something that we must continue to explain to people that is it. So it really worries, and it's not just the masks alone, but all the other measures together is the one that creates that ability not to spread the infection. But what we have also coming out this week is the fact that I think we need to strengthen our protocols. We need to we are going to give clear guidelines that if you are a hairdresser, what and what should be done in a hairdressing salon. What and what should be done in a barbering salon. What should be done in the market. I think there's lack of clear guidance on that, and we are coming up very closely with that. We just done that with the local airports. Put tests there. We know how to manage your bags, who wears masks, social distances in the planes, clearly demarcated rules. You know, when you go there, one of the examples I give you that, you know, when you are boarding, they take your ticket and they give you one. Now you'd have your ticket and give them one instead of the other way around, so that everybody. So we need to come up with those things that also keep clear direction.
The delay or seeming lack of proactivity in doing the things you are saying you want to do, doesn't it affect the effectiveness of your fight? For example, after the president has said we should wear the mask and lifted the lockdown, it took a week before we got the directives from you. or the minister, issuing and telling us what sort of mask, where to wear the mask, how to wear the mask, all of that. It took a week.
Yeah, something, yes. We are in a response mode, and these are things are happening very fast. Maybe what comes out as a directive on paper comes a bit later than the real community education and meeting communities and telling them exactly how to do it, whilst we work through the specifications, etc., to put it out there clearly. So
even before the president begins to tell us that this is what I expect you to do.
Yes, and so those are the things that maybe the write-up that comes a bit late, but as you've heard Dr. Youngson, the media, etc., these education and interactions start way back before the clear these things come out. Maybe it's the write-up that come out late, but in terms of the real action,
we'll flag that as one of the challenges in the progress report that we are going to look at now. So now let me begin with you. Progress. Beyond the platitudes that you are enjoying from all over the place, what can you show us now to vindicate the fact that you have made a lot of progress?
Yeah, thank you very much. When you are faced with such a condition, the real issue is to be able to identify the cases and manage them. And I mean, that's the way I want to put it. And in doing so, we are working towards making sure that we don't get in further imports, and that's why the borders are closed.
Right.
Now, you need to track people, you need to test people, you need to treat people and isolate them. And that's a very, very important component that we are doing. That's what the Koreans did, that's what all those countries have done. And in that instance, we've been able to test currently about 113,000 people. I mean, for a country of 30 million, we've been able to put a lot of people who are sick in isolation and in treatment, albeit some of them even at home treatment where we feel the environment is appropriate. And now we have people who are not asymptomatic in isolation camps. Yes, we may not have had all of them, but that to me is an important step in ensuring that transmission is, if not curtailed, is significantly being reduced. And to me, that's what it is. And that is why we've still been able to maintain even the positivity rate still low. For example, those who have symptoms and meet the definition for testing, we are only getting about 2.7. I wouldn't want to say the word only. Maybe that's we are getting 2.71%, which is still a low prevalence looking at other countries where they are getting 10%, 20%. And so that gives us hope that when we started, we were having the same rate, and we've been able to maintain that positivity rate, despite the fact that we've done over 26 or so thousand samples in that group. If you look at the overall testing, we have a positivity rate of 1.83 as the last figure that you quoted. So that is also an indication that you are not also, the infection is not getting out of hand. We wish it is 1% or less than 1%. But that is still a manageable situation that if we ramp up our public health systems, we should be able to contain and put this condition under control. The fortunate thing is that about 85 to 89% of our cases are in Accra. So that creates a good buffer for us to be able to contain, and that's why we have enhanced our activities, especially in the district in Greater Accra where we have cases. So those are the things that we are doing and we continue to do. We are ramping up our treatment facilities across the country so that anywhere you are able to look at that. Now, with the northern sector, the Volta sector, Volta region, they are not going to have any backlog. So they should be able to report in clear time because of the number of labs that have been. Accra has an epicenter. There are none of cases here. And even by the time we finish all those things, we should be able to.
So now we have in total how many testing centers?
It keeps changing. Yesterday, Konfanachi was added, so we should have close about 8 to 10 now, because we have the Noguchi, the preference lab in Accra. We have the CSR. I'm talking about CSR, and we are now trying to add the police. There's the police lab, the forensic lab.
And the veterinary people.
And the veterinary people are also part of that group. If you go to Kumasi, now KCCR, we are putting up Konfanoche, is being added to the group. We are working on Takoradi, the reference lab. Tamale, the Pond Tamale, and Navrongo Research Center are on board. So that gives us a large level. Like I said, who last week has tested about 527 cases since it was started about 2 days ago. Sunyani, no, we don't have any.
Yeah, because we have heard them suggest that, you know, the research center in Sunyani deserves a certain attention. They have suggested that they have the capacity to do so. But
you mean Kintampo?
Kintampo, yes. But no attention has been paid to them.
Oh, we are looking at it. It's not, you see, the PCR machines, we have regular one, we have the real-time PCR, and that is something else. You see, one thing about that area is that since we started, the 3 Brun-Ahafo regions and Savannah has not reported any case, despite the fact that they are doing a lot of testing, especially Bono East.
Okay.
There's been no case.
Okay.
But of course, that doesn't mean that we will not work. But what those groups are doing is preparing all those, including getting a lab and being able to have a way of, even if they don't have a lab, a quick transportation of samples to KCCR or neighboring for the test to be done.
Okay. So, Dr. Jansen, adding to what he has enumerated, quarantine centers, how people who are isolated are being taken care of and the rest, what would you say? Is there some good progress in that space?
Well, you see, clearly we've made a lot of progress in terms of our testing capacity. But we also still have the problem with us because, at least within the short term, we still have the backlog. And what that does is that it impedes our ability to move forward quickly, i.e. getting to know who is positive, picking the patient up quickly to go through treatment and what have you. The more you wait, as in the waiting time, and from what we are seeing, people are also not respecting some of the preventive measures. Then there is the likelihood that the person having been tested and awaiting results will still be moving around, and if he turns out to be positive, within that 3, 4 day, 5 day, or 1 week plus, as we've seen in some cases, he has the ability to spread the disease, and that adds on to our case buildup. So if we are able to go through these processes quickly and then get to the point where we can get real-time results, then we'll be able to be ahead of the virus. But as it stands now, we are still struggling because of the initial challenges we all had, because the system itself was not ideally prepared for that. But we are making some strides. But we need to do a lot more. We need to do a lot more. So there's also another challenge associated with the testing. What is happening is that some of the people, upon being tested, it becomes difficult to reach out to them. You see, Kofi said he hasn't had his results, which for all of us is not something.
He's actually making efforts to know.
Yes. And there are also people who are also evading us. You see, if everybody was behaving like Kofi, we'll be fine. But there are people who are evading us. They test, and when you are looking for them, based on whatever results you have and whatever protocols you want them to adhere to or take them through, sometimes you can't find them. You may find them after a longer period, or some you can't even find. You see, and these people are also in the communities.
And these people, when they hear stories like those of Kofi, does it not rather discourage them from wanting to do what you expect them to do?
You see,
Kofi and his kind are being very responsible. He doesn't want to begin to get into, you know, to live a life that is likely to endanger other people.
Which is great.
So he wants to know as quickly as possible his status so that he can decide how he conducts his life. And a month and nothing has come.
You see, Samson, I think that we should all agree and accept the fact that, look, there are sometimes challenges with the system. Those systemic challenges sometimes are not the making of the health professionals. But of course, we need to go around them. And we are doing our best to go around them. At least in Kofi's case, I remember Dr. Abaje stating clearly that if he gets the details, he will make sure he follows up and all that. Sometimes we don't even get to know some of these things. So genuinely, these are some of the problems that we encounter. But for people who are deliberately evading us, sometimes we have patients who have tested positive. We go into the community wanting to get them into the treatment centers, and they are not ready to go.
Okay.
The community gangs up against the health professionals. And this is not right. You know, in Sierra Leone, when the Ebola epidemic started the last time, these were some of the things that happened to them. People actually started attacking the health workers. It got to a point the health workers did not go to them, and that gave them the opportunity, or gave the virus the opportunity to also spread among the very same people we were trying to protect. Okay. So one key thing we all need to look at is our attitudinal influences when it comes to this pandemic and how we are handling it.
All right.
We need to look at our attitude as a people. Okay. It is not the system in terms of the health sector alone, but as individuals and communities, we need to take a lot more responsibilities for our own lives.
Let's pick the views of Dr. Sevakin. And also joining us is Kwame Esiedu Sapong. Kwame Esiedu Sapong. He is a pharmacist and also with the CDD Ghana. Thank you for joining us, Kwame.
Thank you, Samson, for having me.
Great. So you and Dr. Sevakin, I'll get to Dr. Sevakin and come to you because there is another angle we would like to bring you on about this whole thing. Now, Doc, the questions being asked is about, can't we be clear about our turnaround time as far as the tests are concerned? You are the ones doing the test.
Indeed, Samson, we are always very clear about the turnaround time. We know that between 6 to 8 hours, we should be able to give you the results. But again, it boils down to the starting specimen. So the specimen presented. For example, we know that currently we are using sputum. You know, sputum is mucoid. So when we receive sputum in our labs, we have to do some pre-preparation activities. And this can really take a very, very long time. We know that thankfully we have received some swabs. So actually for us at KCCR, we are really looking very much forward to receiving the swabs. Now, when we receive swabs, you don't need any pre-preparation activities. You just start processing the sample. So you do your RNA isolation or extraction. You go on to do your amplification, and then you have your results. But if I have received sputum, then I need to spend a lot of time. So these are some of the challenges. And again, I mean, for us, we are even also excited that now there are other testing sites. But we also need to recognize that this virus is a typical, we call it biosafety level 4 virus. So even for all the testing labs, we never work with the live virus. So we never culture the virus. If you want to do that, then you need a biosafety level 4.
When can we look to real-time results?
So we can look at real-time results when we don't have backlogs. Because if we have backlogs because we had limited testing sites. But now, thankfully, we have set up 2 labs in Tamale, one in Tamale and one in Pont Tamale. I know that next week, Western Region will come on board. We know that in Kumasi, Konfanoche will come on board hopefully next week. So once we expand and we have more testing sites, then the issue of backlogs, and importantly, we'll be able to also produce or provide real-time results. I mean, we are all interested in giving out real-time results, but then with the limited testing sites we have, we can only, at a point in time, work on the number of samples we have. And so as the days goes on, we end up getting some few backlogs. But we are actually clearing all those backlogs. So we have given ourselves up to early next week to ensure that we don't have any backlogs.
Very interesting. Let me get to Kwame Seidu-Sapong. And Kwame, first of all, we are excited to know that you have volunteered, or you are part of the process in the UK to assist, in their fight. What exactly are you doing, and what do you see that you think would be useful for Ghana?
Thank you, Samson. I'm doing a number of things. I mean, at the moment, I'm working as just a pharmacist, which I've not done for a pretty long time, because obviously you do the management and other things. But in this fight, it's all hands on deck. So my day job basically now is a frontline pharmacist who actually dispenses advice, picks up the phones, speaks to people who are anxious, makes sure people's medication, especially all those over 70 who've been shielded off and are not allowed to come out, so to speak, because they're being protected from the virus, to make sure that there's a supply chain going on and they can receive all their medicines on time. So that's what I do in the day job. But I'm also involved. I did volunteer, as you rightly said, to be one of the first people to actually get jabbed with this vaccine, which some I think I'm a bit crazy. Some of my colleagues felt I was crazy. But the reason why I did it was that if you look at the UK statistics, about 72% of all people who've passed away are from Black and ethnic minority groups. So disproportionately, the Black man, the Asian, are dying compared to the whites, the Caucasians, and others. But when it comes to participation in clinical trials, less than 10% of us are willing to volunteer. So this was the question I asked myself. I said, if we are the ones who are going to lose our lives, and we are not prepared to stand up and dare to die, then obviously we are not prepared to dare to live as well, because we are going to become sitting backs and get hit. So yes, I took that job, and I also am participating in the Turkish trial, where they are giving a number of medicines to frontline workers to prevent the virus actually from attacking them and culturing. So they are using 3 medicines, which obviously I wouldn't want to go into details about it. So those are the 2 things that I'm doing. So it's not just about talking, it's also about stepping up to the plate and trying to be part of the fight.
Right. So you have also observed how Ghana has been managing this so far. The Ghana team has received a lot of applause, but there obviously are challenges as well. From where you sit, share with us your observations.
You see, Samson, the way I look at help, and for that matter, science, is always not to say how well you've done, but how better you could have done. So I come from the standpoint of not actually saying, oh, you've not done anything. Because both Dr. Abuaji and Dr. Jansen would know that as scientists, what we do is to gather body of evidence. So it starts by the body of science building for individuals and teams doing their research, publishing research papers, which go through peer review. Then as it's approved and published in established journals, people then gather the primary research into secondary research and do systematic reviews. Then for us in health, there's what we call the Cochrane reviews, which are the brand one science that we go from. So when I'm looking at anything, I'm always trying to look at it from that critical perspective. And therefore, yes, I would say that Ghana has done quite well, but there's a lot more we could have done. And I listened to Dr. Abuaji when he was speaking. For example, when you look at our testing, I heard on Joy a couple of days ago about a pathologist from the military hospital who was saying that someone had tested negative, but when they had done the autopsy, they had found out that they had tested positive for COVID. That throws up a number of things.
Okay.
It could be that, yes, they
so
tested negative.
do this. Hold on there for me briefly. Let's hear exactly what the pathologist had to say about this examination that they did, and then we'll come to you. Let's hear the pathologist.
Postmortem unravels so many things. Initially, I've done 2 cases that results came as negative. The family wanted to know. But subsequent tests that we took during postmortem proved positive.
This is a principal part of the fighting with the COVID. We can now do our research, our investigation to support the treatment we are doing giving to the patients.
All right, so that's the pathologist there who was speaking to Lateef Idris about the issue that you mentioned. And you say it throws up a number of issues. Yes.
It throws up a number of things. The first thing is the person could have genuinely been negative at the time the test was done. Yes. And subsequently, with a virus that is so virulent, might have contracted the disease later on down the line, and then subsequently died. It could even be a hospital-acquired infection when you went into the infection because they placed there. That's one thing. It could be that the test was negative because the incubation period of the virus is such that if the test was done too early, it wouldn't be picked, and therefore they will test negative. But then the incubation is going on.
Okay.
It could also be what is called in science a false negative, where the actual person was positive, but it turned out negative, which then has issues to do with, is it a systematic error? Is it a sampling error? Is it even got to do with the sensitivity of the test? So when things like this happen, we need to look at it with a critical eye and ask ourselves, what is going on here? Because that could impact, if, for example, it's a false negative. Statistically, how many false negatives are we having? Is it statistically significant? Does it then mean that a proportion of the people who probably have tested negative in our test are actually positives? That is one thing to look at. Then, if you heard Dr. Boadi,
and in this case, they actually did a postmortem on 2.
Yes.
Who had tested negative,
2,
but on postmortem examination were positive.
Yes. So if it's 2, it opens up a can of worms, and then you ask yourself, how many more exist? So these are the things I'm looking at. And then the other thing from a testing standpoint is what Dr. Boadi was talking about. And he said, if you realize our ratio of positive tests to total tests has gone up from 1.5 to 1.83. It is true that it's still very low compared to other countries, but it is also true that statistically, our test positives has gone up by 20% because it's increased by 0.33, and the baseline is 1.5. So 0.33 divided by 1.5 times 100 is 20%. If you are getting a 20% spike with a virus which is known to have a reproductive number close to 3, you should be concerned, especially when you look at it from the point of view that it took us close to 39 days to move from our first 2 cases to over 1,000 cases, 1,042. But it took us less than 6 days to go from there to 1,550, which is a clear indication that our doubling time has also changed. And that should be another concern for us. Then if you disaggregate Ghana and you look at the different curves, because like you see, in Accra, they are on a different trajectory from the rest of the country. But if you look at Ashanti region now, Ashanti region is also beginning to pick up. If you then factor in because if you look at any disease, especially an infectious disease, what we call the R0 or the reproductive number changes and varies as the disease goes on. Because even if you introduce interventions like social distancing, it's going to affect the infectivity of the virus. So if you look at Ghana, we've done a rough calculation and we have an idea what the R number for Ghana is. But the problems with it is, what is the lag time between the reports we're seeing on the Ghana Health Service portal, which we're using to do the calculations, and when sampling is picked? And so we are talking about it as a crude number. But even with that crude number, we are concerned because we definitely know that Ghana is in an exponential phase. And we are concerned because the president is right in saying that in this phase, we should use face masks because you want to stop the transmission of the virus. But people are not doing it. We saw what happened in Ekwapim. We're seeing it in some markets and all that. And so if we are not going to do these things, then try as the Ghana Health Service may do with the best will in the world, we would still have issues. The final thing I'd say before I go is, another thing we've not picked up on is that if you look up till last Sunday, our mortality was 11. We had lost only 11 people to COVID. By Wednesday, it went up to 16. Thursday, it went up to 17. That is a spike of 54%. So though you would say that our mortality is low, the changes that are taking place in the underlying data are concerning for people like us who look at it from a critical and peer review standpoint and say, yes, they are doing a lot, but there seems to be some seismic changes that are taking place that we need to be cognizant of.
Okay, so what I'll do now, I'll take a quick break. When we return, we'll get to Dr. Aboagye because a number of questions are coming up for him as regards, you know, this, some of the comments that he himself has made suggesting it does look as if we have, is it flattened or managed our curve, and a couple of other matters that are coming up. We'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here we are trying to assess Ghana's progress so far. We want to check if the evidence backs the praise that Ghana's team is receiving. And then many of you have even brought in questions. You're asking, should you be expecting some lockdown, if not general, in specific areas where it appears that there's a disproportionate distribution of the cases, and so on. So we'll get to all of that. And then there have been questions raised about some challenges. There are even frontline workers who have complained about PPEs. How far are we doing with all of that? Yes, so, Doc, some people want to know, for example, and I asked that question to Dr. Silverken, when can we look to real-time results so that we don't have to wait 2 weeks and we don't have to have a Kofi situation where he's waited almost a month now?
Yeah, thank you very much. For the greatest backlog challenge we had was more with KCCR because they don't have as many PCR machines as Noguchi. And if Dr. Silverken said they are going to be ready by early next week, then that will mean that by that time we should be able to do a catch-up. Because there's been a lot of ramp-up in Accra, and be able to look at that, so we can look at it. But I just want to also...
You said that about KCCR. How about Noguchi?
Yes, Noguchi had a smaller number of backlog compared to KCCR. And looking at the capacity of Noguchi, if KCCR can catch up by early next week, Noguchi should be able to do the same.
In fact, one KCCR had about 13,000 backlog. Noguchi had about 5,000. So clearly, Noguchi's capacity is way bigger. And once they've been able to come down on their numbers to 5,000, and looking at the rates at which they are testing, clearly Noguchi should be able to do that quickly. But that will also depend on the kind of contact tracing we are doing and the numbers of people who are being roped in. Because as the numbers surge up, we are now around 2,074 officially. But we know that in the next couple of week or two, we may be doubling, we may be getting like, say, a 30 to 50% rise or something. These are all projections. And once that goes up, that's new numbers, 20 or 30 or 40, maximum 50% of the current figure. We need to do contact tracing for them as well. So that what it means is that a lot more people might also be brought on. So yes, we are aiming to clear the backup, but we also need to get people to understand that the dynamics are not that simple, especially now that we are doing the enhanced contact tracing and testing.
And is it the pulse sampling that we are still using? Particularly, is that only for Noguchi, or everybody else is doing that, all the testing centers?
Well, I know that KCC also do pulse testing, and probably that's one area that, I mean, I'm not a virologist, but I'm sure these are proven tests that I also know that many Western countries are doing the same. In a country where you have a low prevalence like that, what it means is that with about 1.8%, if you did about 100 tests, you get only about 2 positives.
At the Ghana Health Service, you have the Ethical Review Committee. They would have to approve that this pulse sampling has to be done. Have they given that approval?
The universities have their own ethical review committee. Noguchi has his own Noguchi, so they don't rely on our ethical review committee. But these are methodologies that have been there for a long time. And in science, we won't have all kinds of debate that will go on every method. And someone may believe in another method, someone has big issues with that. And so it's something that will probably...
But you need to be sure of approvals, maybe the CDC or WHO would have had to approve them.
We don't need CDC, we don't need WHO. We have our systems here to look at, and Noguchi is a highly respected lab in the world, and we believe that whatever they do is above board.
Okay.
But I just wanted to make some comments on what Mr. Sedu from London, the pharmacist.
Yes.
You see, some of these figures, if you look at them, it depends on exactly what you're doing. The first 39 days we're talking about, we're just doing routine surveillance. As soon as you start going out to look for who has it, the numbers are going to change. And so if you start ramping them up in those positives, it becomes a bit and some of the deaths, it's not as if those were deaths in the last 2 days prior to that. It depends on when the death is reported. Some of them died on arrival, samples were taken, so the results comes in a week's time. And then, of course, we are being transparent, so we add it to the list. If you remember the last time I said, we are evaluating the figures and confirming that, and once we confirm, we publish them. So, I mean, 17, if it's in your family, is a lot. But looking at the number we are dealing with, we still have a relatively low mortality rate. So those increases in positive, it's all about how you get a full picture. In surveillance, it's not just about the numbers. You have to look at the full picture. If you say, for example, Eastern region is becoming a hotbed, Eastern region may just have one large camp where you have so many people positive. That doesn't pose a threat to the region. So you may, even in our classification, we classify Central region at a higher risk than Eastern region, because the Eastern region ones are circumscribed and you can really deal with them. But when you have sporadic ones spreading everywhere, one here, one there, then you have that's when you... So the classification is not so much only about the numbers, where they are and how they are acquired and how you can be contained.
Right. So what are some of the challenges that you have faced over the period? We have heard from some of the people on the front line. You are the one sort of coordinating everything that has to be done. What are some of the challenges you face? And we want to know them so that those that concern us, we can assist you.
Yeah, but I think PPE has always been a big issue. PPE is, they're more like supplies that you may have today, you will not have tomorrow, because they have to be replenished all the time. And so where there are a few supply chain issues, you may have a distribution challenge. That's one. Initially, we had a major distribution production challenge. Even when we started, even if you have money, you can't find to buy. So, but now that with the local production, a large number has been done and currently being pushed. And see, when you're dealing with medical things, it is not just produce and share. You produce, you test, you do quality control, and then you put, because what we don't want, I'm sure you've heard that, is it Germany or so, or one of those countries where they have rejected their PPEs, that they are not safe. All those things have to be checked to ensure that whatever reach the health worker is of good standard, that's a protective, and so that doesn't give you you think you are protected when you're actually having masks that has holes in them. So those are a few supply chain issues, but now that the production is ongoing, you should be able to, they are being resolved.
What else?
Well, the most important one is the behavior of our people. And one is the fact that people are not adhering to the social distancing, hand washing, etc. That creates a big challenge for us. That would mean that all your effort to contain it's been eroded because people will continue to spread because they are not abiding by those things. Sometimes through the way information is handled. One of our greatest things that we are doing is isolation. If I'm not sick and I'm isolated in some place, it is not a very pleasant experience that you are mild, you don't have any complaint, but because of the cases you are managing, you are isolated from your family, etc. And so when media goes there and raise issues that affect people's ability to now accept to go there, it affects our efforts significantly. And I think that's something that has to be looked at, that you go and raise all kinds of issues which are normal, that if I'm put somewhere, I'll not be happy, and you come and blow it as if you don't have this mortar this morning, and becomes a big issue. What you are saying is that those who are now ready to come should refuse to come, and then that creates a big problem for all of us. And I think those are some of the things that we really need to look at.
Okay. So, Dr. Hansen, there are those who suggest, for example, that one of the challenges should be the inability to get real-time, test results. And it is not exactly about the testing centers, and that the officers who are supposed to do the contact tracing and bring these results, or government, so to speak, is part of managing that timing. What do you know about that?
Okay, let me just add a quick one to what Dr. Abba just said. When it comes to the attitudinal bits, we should look at what we are doing as a state. I know the risk communication and social mobilization team within the structure headed by Dr. Abwajida Costa. I've been part of the work, and I know they've done a lot of work, and they are still doing a lot. But then, if we look at the attitude of the Ghanaian generally, not that Ghanaians are difficult, but our brothers and sisters who don't seem to be adhering to some of these rules, then what it tells us is that we still need to do a lot more education, a lot more of the social mobilization and communication to ensure that the problems that Dr. Abwaji raised vis-a-vis the communication and how things are being done in some of the centers are actually corrected. And then even in spite of whatever reports that may come from some of these centers, we need to look at it in two aspects. One, if there are genuine issues that the media is raising, for which reason government or the system has to address, definitely we need to address it, because if that is left unchecked, it also becomes a disincentive to the fight that we are all waging. And then two, for the ordinary man who may be fed with this information, that person should also be made to understand that your own personal circumstances might be different from somebody else. And that if you are positive, for example, or you know you are high risk, but you are refusing to be moved to a particular point where you can get proper care, it could inure negatively to you yourself as a person, your immediate family, and the community you find yourself in. We need to sort that.
Yeah, the question I was asking was about this real-time testing thing results. The suggestion is that government's response, team is sort of managing the timing. There are those who have also raised suggestions within your fraternity that even the mortality data is also being managed.
Okay, what we are saying is this. It is not just about the communication, especially when we look at the hospital setup, that today our numbers have gone up by, say, 100 or 50 cases. But at the hospital level, for example, what we want is real-time results, i.e., the clinician who has identified a suspected case and has requested that samples be taken and is holding this suspected case in the health facility needs to get the results quickly, because decisions will have to be made based on that results. So if you delay for a couple of days to a week plus, you are hampering the work of the practitioner. Beyond that, you also put the health personnel at risk, because here is a patient who everybody suspects, at least per the protocols, to be potentially a candidate that can be described as a positive case, for which reason we've done the test. Now, once you know that, it means you need to take extra preventive measures to ensure that you don't contaminate your health professionals. And then, if the patient is such that the patient is one that was on the ward before the decision to screen was made, you also don't contaminate other patients and relatives, visitors who come around. So for us, the real-time results is not even just about the numbers, as in the publishing of the numbers that we have 100 and what have you. For us, it is about receiving the test results quickly to enable us to take decisions. Of course, in the bigger picture, Ghanaians want to know the numbers. So if they are being updated on a regular basis, they then have a lot more confidence, because in this exercise, confidence is one thing. If you don't let your people come along with you because they have lost confidence in you, you might not win the fight.
Okay. Let me pick Kwame Sapong-Siedu's mind on this. The suggestions that the government's response team is directly influencing, you know, the timing of case disclosures. How can they give a response that will take away that kind of, you know, claim if it is not true? That mortality data, it's being managed. What can they do? For example, should they be giving us the dates of the deaths? Dr. Baji said the deaths have just not occurred, don't just occur. Should they be giving us the dates of the occurrence of the deaths, for example, so that there will be sufficient, you know, disclosure on these matters, transparency?
I wouldn't say so. The point is that there are ethical issues when it comes to managing what's called patient identifiable data. So, for example, you wouldn't want to be putting out time of death because they are people's loved ones and they are close to them. But what you want to know is, if whatever you do with epidemiological data, there would be a lag time. We all know that. There would be a lag time between the time the incident, even like if a sample is collected, there's a lag time between the sample being collected and getting to the lab. And like Dr. Swatnika explained, there's, depending on the quality of the sample, there would be a lag time between sample preparation and testing. There would also be a lag time between sample testing results and actually certification of the results, because they are quality control and quality assurance measures that go on with these things. And then there would be a lag time between the certification of the results, communication of the results, and official release. From where I sit, all these lag times have to be lumped together, and we need to know. Why do I say so? Because with epidemiology, you plot epidemiological curves. It's from the curves that you can determine, is the R number changing? Is it going up? Is it coming down? Is the curve flattening? Is the doubling time changing? Is it coming down? Those are the things that will determine the measures, whether we need to get harsher with our measures and all those things. So it is not about saying that specifically give us, because it's virtually impossible to give real-time data. But let us know that the data that's being reported is in 24-hour lag delay, 48-hour lag delay. So if someone like me picks the data from the Ghana Health Service, like Dr. Abaji said in response to what I said earlier, that, oh, they went into enhanced testing. If I get the data from Ghana Health Service and I'm using it to do projections and modeling, the data comes with a day, and that's what I'm going to do. However, if I know that there's a week or 7 days lag time, I would factor that in. And I'll give you a typical example. When we were doing the crude calculations for Ghana's R/U currently, we used a 7-day lag time and a 5-day lag time simply because we had heard on the grapevine, and like even some of the calls said, that it was taking up to 7 days. Some people would say up to 12 days to get all this. And we came up with two different numbers. And so that is instructive, because if you are then going to advise anyone or inform anyone or have conversations with the media like I'm having with you now, I am disadvantaged because I cannot actually critique or praise the government's position and their trajectory properly. And these are the reasons why. So when I hear people ask, why do you want the data quickly? What do you want to use it for? I really see a lack of understanding of the different roles that different people play. The government has a role. The likes of Dr. Abuaji have a role in managing it. Civil society has a role in understanding what's going on, because we live in a world where, even in the UK, I'll give you an example when it came to the deaths. Initially, all the reports that were coming up were the deaths that were happening in hospitals. And then the press and civil society organizations started kicking a fuss because that didn't show the true picture. There were deaths happening in nursing homes and at home and in other areas. So now the data that comes is the composite data. Why did that happen? It happened because people went onto the ONS website and started scrutinizing the official government data, knowing the lag times and all that. So if we don't have these things and we just accept them and accept the government position or the Ghana Health Service position as the absolute gospel, it makes our fight also difficult, because the government and the Ghana Health Service need the input of all stakeholders to be able to realize if what they are doing is robust enough. And like I said when I started, I don't criticize, or no one criticizes because government or Dr. Abuaji and co are not doing their best. It is, can they do better? What can we do to stretch the yardstick so that ultimately the Ghanaian and the general public and our economy benefits?
What one aspect do you think they can do better in?
Well, the first thing is what they've said about clearing the backlog. Because if they clear the backlog and the results are coming in real time, which still would be delayed because of the sampling and all that, and it gets to them, update the website, say every 6 hours, every 24 hours. If you look at Worldometer and all that, that is what's happening. Update it so that people, so that then even information that people like I put out is more informed. Because you then know that I'm getting this data every 6 hours. I'm getting it every 24 hours. And I think if the government and the Ghana Health Service did that, I know it's difficult, but if they did that, it would enhance the debate, and it would even enhance the education of the Ghanaian so that they comply with some of these social distancing measures.
Okay. Now, Dr. Silverkin, when you listen to, or you having become aware of the disproportionate distribution of the cases, are you in any way contemplating, like some of our viewers and listeners are, that the universal lifting of the lockdown is not the best, and that there's a possibility of some sort of lockdown to help you do your work better?
Indeed. Just before I go to the substantive issue, we also need to recognize that even when we receive the samples, we prioritize them. So if these are suspected cases, so people are in the hospital, then definitely we stop everything we are doing, and because we know the clinicians or the attending physicians would need the results to enable them carry on with any sort of management. And then I think you also made a point about getting clearance, ethical review to enable us do the pooling. We don't need ethical clearance to enable us do pooling, because pooling is an established protocol. It was established by one Danford sometime in 1943. And for our work on coronaviruses, we have been doing pooling all the time. But the point I also want to make is that you don't just get up and start pooling. The first thing you do as an expert virologist is to establish something known as the limit of detection of your assay. So once you do that, then you would know that my assay is such that it is able to detect one copy of my virus. So if I have just a copy of the virus in 1 microliter in a tube, my assay is so sensitive that it is able to detect it. So you can also do sensitivity and specificity. But then the critical thing you do is to do the limit of detection of your. So there's really no qualms about us doing pooling. But of course, like Dr. Abuaji said, a point will come when pooling may not be very useful.
Okay.
Because if you realize that your positive rates are going up, then it means that for every sample you pool, and again, I also need to say that you don't just get up and say, I'm doing pools of 5 or pools of 10. You need to do your own background checks and decide on that. But like I was saying, if you get high positivity rates, then it will mean that almost every sample you pull or samples you pull, chances are that every single one of them may turn out to be positive. Then you have to go back and in the field of virology, we call it resolving the pool or dissolving the pool. So there's a time you do pooling and there's a time you do not do pooling. But the critical thing is about the fact that you have to determine the limit of detection. And so this you can do serial dilution, downstream dilutions to enable you determine the limit of detection. But it has actually generated a lot of interest. Now people know about pooling and all and all that.
Okay. So, and that's that small bit of the question I asked you, depending on the distribution of the cases in the various areas, are you contemplating, is this something you think about, that there's a possibility that there will be some, lockdown in some places in a way also to assist you to be effective?
I think so, because there should always be a story behind every single one of these positive or confirmed cases we are seeing displayed on the website. So, for example, Central Region, I don't know whether these are contact tracing. I don't know whether these are suspected cases. I don't know whether these are imported cases. So, obviously, we need some disaggregation of the data on the website. And I think the president actually said it, that, look, there may be a point in time where we may be doing some targeted lockdowns. And he even used the word curfews. Yes. So that if we realize that people in some communities are becoming stubborn, then they will impose curfews on them. And I think we may already be looking into that bit, because if I look at I look at Upper East region, we remember this young boy, I think somewhere in Wale Wale, who died. He passed on, and even the family members were contemplating. They actually insisted that he had asthma, so he had an asthmatic attack. But then a week after his death, one of the family members also tested positive. We also remember the pregnant woman who claimed that she did not travel. I think she said she went to Takwa, yes, and then she was tested and she became positive. If you go to other countries, such as Germany, look, they have histories behind every single sample. I know that at least for the 13th case recorded in Germany, the Munich cluster, it was just because somebody passed on salt from a table in a restaurant. So if we get to know some histories, this is not about disclosing the identities of our patients. Right. But if we get to have a bit of histories, Western region, I don't know where these numbers are coming from. I mean, Ashanti, I also don't know where these numbers. So we may also want to look at some disaggregation and actually focus on specific hotspots. Okay. And I love the spot map being displayed on the website. Now we can actually see where the numbers are brewing. Now, can we go in there and do some targeted, very, very targeted, if we've got to suppress them, so declare a total lockdown in such communities, and especially if they are also not adhering to laid down mitigation strategies? Do we even want to impose some curfews on them? I think we may want to start restructuring ourselves. We may want to start revising our notes. So, because look, we need to be ahead of this virus. Right. You do not want this virus to be ahead of you. Especially for me, I call it a smart virus, because look, you may appear healthy, you may be hale and hearty, but you may actually be incubating, and you may also be shedding the virus. So I think that if we are able to see some disaggregation And of course, it will also help those who are into modeling. I am not I don't model, but I'm sure that once we disaggregate these numbers, we will be able to calculate the reproduction number. We may be able to say that, look, in Ghana, I mean, we had to collect data from other sources because we wanted to also look at the reproduction number. And we had to pick information from other sources. But if we have it displayed on our website, or we have it made available, I'm positive that we'll be able to get around with all the things we are all yearning to find. Right. I know that already the Ghana Academy of Arts and Sciences, look, they have put together excellent experts. And I'm looking forward to them coming up with some of the exciting things, the modelings, the predictions we are all interested in seeing. We know that once we see these predictions, these numbers displayed, look, it will allay some level over optimism, because initially some people even thought that, look, as for Africa, because of sunlight and all those things, the virus will even not be able to survive in our environment. So for those who are super optimistic, it may bring them down. And of course, so for people who are also very anxious, maybe that level or the level of anxiety will be reduced. So I am always talking about us disaggregating the data, and I'm positive the Ghana Health Service is already working towards or in that direction.
Okay. As I hear from Dr. Aboagye, they've done that already. I'll let him confirm that quickly, but Dr. Jansen, should people have an expectation that sometime soon the Ghana Medical Association will issue another, statement asking for targeted lockdown in any place, and which are some of these places that you may be looking at?
Well, the association, as it stands now, keeps looking at the bigger picture to see what the next steps will look like. So for us, we haven't taken anything off the table, generally speaking. And like Ken said, this bit about targeted communities is one of the fights we can do. Korea did something of that nature, other countries have done it, and it's yielded results. Especially when you look at the situation we find ourselves in, where some people seem to have forgotten about all the preventive bits following the lifting of the lockdown. So we think that it is fair that all these measures will not be taken off the table. We should look at it, and holistically, wherever we think that it has to be done, it has to be done, and done well. It shouldn't be lip service. And people should understand that as and when, God forbid, we should get into those scenarios where whole communities will be locked up for testing, screening, or whatever that has to be done, and isolating people and treating them properly to ensure that at least we limit spread. People should begin to understand and cooperate. But if they don't want things of that nature, then obviously we need to ensure that all the preventive measures that we are preaching about, they obey them, because that is the only way out for all of us. People are just not responding to some of the calls we are making. And that makes the situation such that it forms the basis for the very things that people are not happy about to come back into the system. Okay. Of course, we are happy that the president has made it clear that he's not averse to going back to some of these measures. And we think that it's about time that we strengthen some of the measures. The enforcement in his
last speech, though, he gave an indication that the expectation when he speaks to us the next time will be to begin to lay down or out measures towards easing, the measures.
Of course, that may be right, but if the reverse is happening, and I don't think that the president will also be justified in just lifting the measures, when clearly the reverse,
like he has always said, he will speak to the science. Okay, so Dr. Aboagye, before we take a break and then come to finish up, you were confirming that you have already done the disaggregation, because what is being said is that that is what we need to survive the disease.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there's so much you can put out there. This you are dealing with a human beings. I mean, we even put a map there, and somebody's able to zoom to see which house the case is coming from.
Okay.
It becomes a stigma issue.
Okay.
So we also have to know how to measure. I'm sure the Sasevakan is talking about Bolga. He knows about this. Excuse me, that she has seen it somewhere. These reports are there. Regions give situation reports every day. But that is not for the general public. Giving us details about who is affected and where the person came from Takwa or Boase. I mean, one of the issues...
Is that the mapping the University of Ghana did?
Yes, I mean, they take the data from us, and we are the ones working with Ghana Association of Arts and Science, we had a webinar with Thursday to give them all the information they need, age, aggregation, all these things are there, but I don't see any country putting all that information on their website. If you are a research institution and you want the information, you know how to get the information. But we also need to, these are ethical issues about people. It's very easy to identify that put a case in Upper West on the field, on the report, and it's very easy for everybody to know it has to be this man. You know, so there are ways that we manage the information. But all this information is there. If I show you what I have here, in terms of the differences that came last week, you know from every district what was the rate of change. And all this information is available for those who need it. But there are ways of some of this message information has to be appropriately managed, and if any research, reputable research information wants information, you know how to request for information so that we don't just spread too much on this thing. When the previous website, there was a lot of information, nobody was reading, everybody was interested in the first screen, you know, and so they ask you a question that's already in the site. So those are some of the challenges.
No, but Tabadi, you see, I agree with you by and large, but I think that we should also try and meet the expectations of some segments of the society that are interested in some of these things. But, and like Silvakin said, we were all looking at least for those of us in terms of care givers or the health professionals. We were very excited when we all saw the hotspots and what have you. Because even interacting with patients, it also informs you, the practitioner, to look out for certain things. That is why we take a lot of social, history and what have you. So I think that we should try as much as possible to blend the two. Yes, we cannot put everything out there. That I agree. But where we think we can do the disaggregation, the mapping, the hotspots, all those bits, clearly we should be able to do that at least to ensure that the others out there who are also professionals but are into research and out of their projections and what have you, they can draw some safe conclusions that will help all of us. We think we need to do out there. But for me, the biggest challenge I think we should be confronted now, as a country, is the behavior of our people. We need a behavioral change. People think that where we are, probably we are safe. We are not. Let's be honest.
No, we're not.
And it's up to government and the ministry and all related agencies to ensure that we do that. And one of the best...
But just to let you know that we share this information a lot with associations.
I agree. I get reports. What I'm trying to say is that we should still listen to those.
As we take the break, there's this concern I think you should address before we do so about patients at the Pentecost Center complaining of poor feeding, shortage of water, among other things.
Yes, thank you very much. That was the day before, when, in fact, the whole of yesterday, I was there from about lunchtime to about 6 p.m. just to see what is going on, and those things have been resolved. Initially, there was some delay in I think they had an issue with the water supply, and that they have quickly had to, because the same place supplying Kolebu and the place, and there was some diversion. And so all those things have been resolved. We've talked to them, we've had this thing, their meals have improved, etc. You see, what happens is that we move people from a 4-star hotel into that place. Definitely, there's going to be a big difference in their expectations. But we are working on it, and even today, I went there, the environment is so nice. They are doing some more like a parade for somebody who has tested negative, will be exiting the distance. So the mood is quite high, and I think we need to resolve a lot of the.
Among their complaints, they were saying that they were being served with, is it Eba Gare Fufu, late in the night.
Yeah, there was a day there's a delay. Their supper was about 7 p.m. Yesterday by 6 p.m. supper was ready. It was not just one; it was jollof rice with yam and some fried rice. So they are giving them variety with fruits and vegetables, etc.
Okay.
That is being.
And we're also saying they don't have doctors who routinely will check on them, you know, among other things. And that was.
If it was allowed, I would have showed you pictures of. We have 40 health workers sleeping there with a tent where they see them, those who have issues, they are seen, and they are there 24/7. Taking care of them. I'm sure GMA
yes, it's good you brought up some of these things. The good thing is that center has become a very integral and important part of our case management now. And for us, the key thing is that government, as the lead person in all this, by way of provision of resources, should ensure that whatever the problems are, within the shortest possible time, they are all resolved. And then moving forward, we put in proper structures. And whatever we replicate there, we do it such that as and when we need to move elsewhere, we have.
But if they have to complain, it shouldn't be about toilet rolls.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. That we need to ensure that we have clear-cut SOPs.
That center is holding about how many people?
Currently, as I said, they have about 400, but I'm sure at the time I left them today more.
And it has a capacity of about 1,000.
700 actually.
Okay.
We have about 110 people who are staff, security, health
they
workers.
Take a bit of that.
Yeah, that takes a bit of it. But now, I think there was a little delay. All this, now we're going to give everybody a package. See, you get to know some of these things that people will come there and not have sponge and all those things. So you learn.
Okay.
And then we quickly have responded to
all right, thank you very much. We take a break and we resume for the very final installment to ask questions about the GMA, for example. We have heard them suggest that we don't have personnel for the 94 hospitals that the president is promising for this year. Have hospital facilities that were built by the Mahama administration been abandoned, as has been suggested. However, the testimony clearly is that, but for some of those infrastructure developments that were embarked upon, we would have been in very difficult times trying to get isolation centers and treatment centers managing the disease. We'll be right back.
On a tour of the Ashanti region by President Akufo-Addo last year, Health Minister Kwaku Agyeman-Manu assured contractors would move to site few weeks from the day of the visit.
End of the month, they will mobilize to site and start working seriously in that place.
This was in October 2019. Government says it found only $38.3 million of $175 million allocated for 6 district hospitals and a residential facility in various parts of the country. Kumewu and Fomena are part of the facilities financed by the United Kingdom Export Financing, and work was expected to be completed in 5 years. Dodowa District Hospital is the only one of the 7 to have been completed, while work on Sekendi, Abetifi and Garu projects like Fomena and Kumewu stalled. A housing project for health personnel in Takoradi also suffered similar fate, as change of government saw investigations into the projects. In July last year, ahead of the president's visit, the health minister gave the first assurance of resumption of work.
I've got to go ahead from government that the contractor should continue with 3 that we're getting close to completion. The Formula one is about 80% complete. The Kumawu one is about 60% complete. And therefore, in Ashanti region, these two could start, or they could recommence work whilst we talk about what we will do. And I've told the chiefs and people of the areas where these facilities are located that within the next 2 to 3 weeks, latest 1 month's time, we might see some work recommencing. The contractor will mobilize to site.
Nothing has happened since then at the 120-bed facility site at Kumawu. Weeds continue to swallow the structures whose stage of work is put at 60%. On 2 occasions, dry weeds caused by Harmattan winds caught fire and exposed the buildings to risk. Few years ago, this place used to be a storeroom for the contractors. Here, they kept pipes, polytanks, and other equipment they were using to construct the hospital. Not long ago, an inferno swept through the place, raising everything to the ground. Some of the equipment have been carried away from the area, but still there are few ashes of the polytank and pipes here. But for the timely intervention of the security men here, the buildings would have been razed to the ground. Structures meant for staff residential accommodation attached to the hospital are almost done. Some of them have already been roofed, and one of them is defected due to neglect. Here is Omanhene of Kumawu, Berima Twenibu Akodua, who sums up sentiments of his people over unfulfilled promises of fixing the hospital.
I'm a medical doctor, so when it comes to areas like this, I have some knowledge. When the health minister visited me, he promised the contractors would be on site in 2 weeks, but to no avail. The president also visited, and we haven't heard anything since.
This year, begin constructing 88 hospitals in the districts without hospitals. It will mean 10 in Ashanti, 9 in Volta, 9 in Central, 8 in Eastern, 7 in Greater Accra, 7 in Upper East, 5 in Northern, 5 in Oti, 5 in Upper West, 5 in Bono, 4 in Western North, 4 in Western, 3 in Ahafo, 3 in Savannah, 2 in Bono East, and 2 in Northeast regions. Each of them will be a quality, standard design 100-bed hospital with accommodation for doctors, nurses, and other health workers. And the intention is to complete them within a year. We've also put in place plans for the construction of 6 new regional hospitals in the 6 new regions, and the rehabilitation of Efiankwanta Hospital in Sekondi, which is the regional hospital of the Western region. We're going to beef up our existing laboratories and establish new ones across every region for testing. We will establish 3 infectious disease control centers for each of the zones of our country, that is the coastal, middle belt, and northern, with the overall objective of setting up a Ghana Center for Disease Control. The recent tragic CSM outbreak, with over 40 deaths, has reaffirmed the need for ready access to such infectious disease control centers.
Right. So, start with you, Dr. Yankson. We had the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association speak to Star FM and say that while this may be a laudable, thing, there should also be focus on producing the personnel that will man these hospitals. But start with, what do you make of suggestions that the focus should rather be on finishing those structures facilities that were commenced and have not been finished, that have been abandoned. The minister says they've not been abandoned. And of course, a couple of them, we know about RAGE that was finished, has become very useful. University of Ghana has become very useful. So what do you say about that? Should we be thinking about building new ones or finishing the existing ones?
Okay. Samson, thank you. I think that we need to understand certain things. We need to first draw a line, separate the two issues. As far as we are concerned, the two issues are two separate agendas altogether. The first is that you have a set of facilities that have been started. Some resources may be available because we contract loans and what have you for some of these projects. Others, there may be some technical, logistical, financial difficulties in there that we need to resolve. As the GMA has always said, these are facilities, whatever it takes for authority to ensure that they are completed for the common good of the Ghanaian, it should be done. So that bit, we don't think we should haggle over it. Secondly, from the records, as you also mentioned, it is clear that most of these hospitals are being attended to. Ghana East, which is now one of the major treatment centers for COVID-19,
right,
was a project that had not been completed at the time the previous government exited. But now it's been completed and it's in use. So clearly, some activity is happening. Maybe the question is the speed. And at this point, we want governments to ensure that these things are sorted out. And this was a call we made, some time back, probably a year ago or something, when UGMC was in the news. We made that call that for us, we should ensure that whatever we set out to do.
The question is, if the purpose, as the president said, is to ensure ready facilities to help in the pandemic's fight, is it not reasonable to expect that those that are almost completed, some of them just a few fittings that is required, should be the focus, rather than looking for money that is not there to begin, 94 new ones?
See, Samson, I think that if we make some of the issues that way, then we are being, in quotes, a group of people who want to disadvantage our own. 88 districts without district hospitals. You cannot say that that is something that we should not be worried about. So whilst we try to fix the ongoing ones, we should also begin to think about them. I mean, with this same analogy you made, imagine these 88 districts, there are outbreaks of any kind of infectious disease, including COVID there at the moment, God forbid, and they don't have places to manage them. How are we going to move on? 88 is a huge number compared to even the number of facilities that are yet to be completed. So we cannot neglect that whole bit, especially where as a country, we've always had a policy that at least every district should have a district hospital. So let's go to the second block, the 88 plus the 3 and everything, 7 up to about 94. Look, the issue of infectious disease centers is one that as a country we've played lip service with for so long a time. And if at this point, COVID has exposed a lot of inefficiencies and inadequacies in our system, and the state, through the president, has taken a decision that we want to construct these infectious disease centers, for us as the Ghana Medical Association, we endorse it because we've always called for it. During the Ebola pandemic, we called for it. And even this year, within the current COVID bid.
As far back as 2004, 2005, I did a research by way of a documentary for the BBC when I was reporting for the BBC, and discovered that the number of Ghanaian doctors in New York were more than all the doctors in Ghana put together.
Yes, at some
the
point,
situation has not changed. The situation has not changed.
No, the situation has changed now. Now, the situation has changed. At some point,
the question
New
really,
York alone had, when I was in school, for example, New York alone had about 700 Ghanaian doctors, and we couldn't boast of that as a country. So that bit is clear. But now, our numbers have gone up. But that is not to say that the brain drain hasn't affected that. But all we are saying is that important institutions like infectious disease centers, we need to ensure that we have them as part of our healthcare delivery system. So we will always vote for it.
Okay.
Now, the district hospitals, or let's say the regional, the policy is that every region should have a regional hospital. It serves as secondary to tertiary level kind of care for that particular region. We have created new regions, and clearly we need to ensure that they also get health facilities. Then comes the district. As for the 88, like I said earlier, it will be out of place to say that we shouldn't construct hospitals. Maybe the timing is what people are talking about. But if we also look at it properly, this timing could also be the best for us, because I know that out there, I don't know how we are going to finance this 88. I must be honest. I'm not part of the state. But I also know that out there, this is one of the best times to get cheap sources of grants, loans, or whatever it is for health infrastructure and the fight generally towards.
What do you mean by that?
No, you see, we have a system where around this time, the whole world is focusing on health. So if, as a country, for example, we need to go out there and get some facility to support our fight against COVID, it will be easier to get that facility than in times that you don't have these things. The cost of getting that facility might be cheaper than at the point where you don't need these things. Of course, when you get your funds, as a country, you will decide how you are going to apportion the distribution of those funds. But like I said, I'm not part of privy to the details. But all I'm saying is that this might even be the best time for us, because we could get easy sources of money which are relatively less cheaper for us as a people. And then we take the bold decision and build. But once government has made that call, I think that the onus lies on all of us, the media, the health service, and every well-meaning Ghanaian, to ensure that government fulfills that promise for us. It should not be a lip service.
All right. As someone who superintends over this sector in a more direct way, what should be the focus? Building, 94 new ones, or finishing what is there? And there's quite a number of the facilities that were done by the Mahama administration. I'm trying to get the exact figure because I have worked with those numbers before. So what should we be looking at?
Well, thank you very much. I think we are creating the impression that the new ones are going to be replacing those old ones. You can see there's a lot of effort making sure that those ones are completed. People have moved to sites, some contractors have been changed, etc., to be ensured that these things are completed. But as part of our policy and our part of even our COVID response is to ensure that we have to strengthen the health system. And strengthening the health system also means that access to care must be good for all. I mean, even in the interest of equity, that all districts must have their own first level referral facility where they get. I'll give you an example. If you go to, say, in some, there are about 4 districts around there who do not have hospitals. And so anytime you go to the hospital, it's fully congested. That affects quality of care, etc. And so it is important that these things are done, and so that our referral levels are properly done with, and the proper care is given, instead of having regional hospital choked because there are so many people without a first referral level. And that's what comes to the 88. And that is an extremely important, especially now we are not talking about...
And these are the same hospitals you talk about where you have one medical officer who is inundated with so much. Some of them practically can't really do anything. I mean, apart from just living literally at the hospital.
I think that's another level that we need to look at. And GMA also knows that probably there are more doctors we are not even employing. Who are now, we have a net receiver of doctors every year. Apart from those trained here, we have those trained in China, Russia, and other places coming in. And so I don't think that we will have such a big challenge stocking them. We need to ensure, and I always say that regions also have the responsibility to make their facility more attractive for people to work there and feel comfortable working there. So those are all things that we need to look at and ensure that not just they build them, but they're also staffed. And that is why these are coming with decent accommodation. That's also an incentive for people to move there.
We know what happens in this country. These projects normally will start and they take forever to do. And the prices will continue to go up. Somebody, if there's change of power, somebody may abandon or delay in taking care of the project. They will start a new one, leave the one that's already there, as we have seen with affordable housing projects. Affordable housing projects that were started by President Kufuor are still being, worked on. Some that President Mahama also started, almost done, are still sitting there. And we have heard of new plans to start new ones too.
Yeah, but sometimes I think these are the areas that we also must take cognizance of the fact that what are the factors that lead to that delay? Are there contractual challenges that creates these challenges? What are the things? How do we ensure that those things are done? Because what I know is that even in districts where the construction is ongoing, it's not part of the number that has been listed.
Okay.
Which means that there are plans to also complete them. So it's not a question of a replacement. I think what we need to look at, how do we ensure that when a facility is supposed to be built in 30 months, that we all work towards that. I think those are the challenges that we need to address. What are the bottlenecks and how do we address them as we run contracts, as we start? So those are the things, for me, we need to look at. But it is extremely important that we build our systems so that people don't have to travel too far for care. People get the best of care. The infectious disease, this is not going to be the last outbreak we are going to get. And so as part of our response was also building our system to be better placed when the next pandemic comes up. And so bringing infectious disease centers that may have research facilities around it is extremely important that as a country, as we move forward, we are better prepared for the next one so that we don't have some of the...
Okay.
But some of these things are even long overdue. Okay. And we need to be honest about it. Look, in Nigeria, when they had their first case, they quickly moved the patient to the infectious disease center. We are here and we are now struggling to even look for places to keep some of these, patients. We've had meningitis happening in the northern parts of the country now. If we had an infectious disease center there, we can quickly mop up within the system and get all patients properly treated in a facility that is built and designed for that purpose that we want to get to. That way, it also improves our health systems, it improves the quality of care. The health professionals who also work in there are also motivated to work and work properly. Sometimes the improvisation and the difficulties around what we do end up even demoralizing some of the health professionals. So we need to take the politics out of this and ensure that, look, governments, whether green, pink, whatever color, as and when they come in, they do the right thing that will benefit the people at large. And there's nothing better beyond health and education.
Okay, so Kwame Sapong-Esedu, what will be your approach? Clearly, some say this is the political season. The president is using the COVID period taking advantage of the COVID period to do politics. But what is wrong with, doing new hospitals when there are some others that need to be finished?
You see, Samson, thank you. There's something that we should all learn from COVID. If there's anything that this infection has taught us, it's taught us that worldwide, we haven't invested in our human security appropriately. We haven't invested in healthcare. And Ghana is no exception. I mean, if you look at the Global Health Security Report that came out in October last year, it stated clearly that the world wasn't prepared for infectious diseases. I remember writing a lot about it. And at that time, it quoted Ghana's Global Health Security Index as less than 40%. It's about 32%. So what Dr. Youngson is saying and what Dr. Abuaji is saying are all correct. We need all these health facilities. And I am glad that everyone agrees that the ones that are historically there should be completed. And I also agree with Dr. Youngson that you cannot have districts without district hospitals. So if you've created as districts, we need to be prepared to resource them with the infrastructure. Sure. On that basis, I would say that I wouldn't have a lot wrong with what the president said and the fact that he wants, in fact, I've said it publicly on social media and other things that I don't see anything wrong with it. But what I would see wrong with it would be if it turns around that these are prioritized to the detriment of the others. And that is what, like Dr. Youngson said, and I agree, we need to keep our eyes on the ball and make sure that all of them are done.
Yes, let's have Dr. Silverkin. I suppose that the good news in what the president said while he spoke about the hospitals for you was the infectious disease centers and to eventually think about a national, sort of center.
Absolutely. I have been excited since I heard the president say that, because, for this current pandemic, even if you want to conduct some research, it becomes very, very, very difficult. For example, we don't have a biosafety level 4, so we are already limited if we want to culture the virus. So we can just do with a biosafety level 3, which we need to inactivate the virus. So for me, I think it is a plus. And it is not just a matter of putting these buildings up, but then resourcing these facilities, so getting state-of-the-art equipment. Because for me, I keep on saying that Ghanaians are brilliant. We are very excellent. We are only shortchanged or challenged when it comes to the needed resources, i.e. the technologies, the equipment and the likes. But if we also get such equipment and the resources, we'll be able to do a lot. We can be doing all the vaccine trials and looking at not vaccine trials, but then coming up with some leads in terms of vaccines, medications, and the like. So I side with your panelists in the studio, as well as Kwame Asiedu, that it is so very important that we use this particular pandemic. I haven't seen a pandemic before. So I think we need to use this as a very good opportunity to at least build on our existing systems. And I expect the media, as usual, to be following on these things keenly to ensure that they are actually brought into fruition.
All right. Now, Kwame, you... Okay, I think we've lost Kwame there, but that should be okay. We are actually running out of time. What did you want to say?
Yes, some of these Kwame is back, old hospitals that are going on, some of them have secured grants or severe loans that is running. So they should really not be mixed up with these new ones that are going to happen, so that whether there are contractual challenges, whether there are contractors who are not doing what they are supposed to, those are the things we need to do and make sure. But I know that for my estate and capital investment, these are projects that are currently ongoing, and there are plans to make sure they are all completed, separate from this 88, which is also very critical that all districts must have hospitals, so that we can really be able to be up and doing and be able to better prepared for whatever, not just the next update, but also ensure that the people become healthier and access to health becomes easy for all.
Okay. But Kwame, as you listen to the president, did you get the impression that these are first and foremost for the fight against COVID-19? And what does that suggest? How long are we looking at for the disease to sort of get out of the system?
Well, Samson, the disease is not going. This bug is going to stick around for a while, and we all know that. If you look at all the projections that are being made internationally, the best option would be for a vaccine to be developed. Even with the vaccine, there are issues around how long it will give confer immunity for, and how long the immunity is going to last, whether it's going to be once in a lifetime vaccine like some vaccines are, it's going to be like the flu jab. So to answer that question as to did I think that it was for this COVID fight, probably yes. But do I believe, just to be quick, I've made a number of observations that to build 88 hospitals in a year is a huge challenge. And the other thing we have to look at is that year actually has an election in the middle. So suffice to say, if we are a country that learns, we would realize that there's a possibility that the election could go either way. Nobody knows until about the morning of December 9th where this election is going to go.
That's if the elections do come on at all.
Yes, but if it goes any other way apart from the president getting a second term, then we are in uncharted territory as to this issue of legacy health projects and how they get abandoned. You talked about the, affordable housing schemes of former President Kufuor and now from the Mahama era. So we need to get to a place where we are learning and realizing that health must not be politicized. So if a president makes this commitment, we should see it as the president of Ghana making the commitment on behalf of the country and not Nana Addo making the commitment. Because if we don't devolve the presidential commitment from the individual who occupies that seat at any particular time, we would always have these problems because when someone else comes, they want to leave their legacy.
All right. Thank you very much. Gentlemen and lady, I would like you who are with us on Zoom to give us just some 30 seconds of your very final words by way of advice to everyone who is listening and how they should protect themselves. Yes, starting with Dr. Silverkin.
Yes, so just for all of us to realize that, look, the virus is here. And like Kwame said, it will be around with us for quite a while. So it behoves on every single one of us to adhere to the various recommendations, i.e. wearing of nose mask. Let us learn how to wear the nose mask. Let us learn how to remove the nose mask.
Right.
Obviously, not forgetting the social distancing. Let us learn what 6 feet is or 2 meters, what 2 meters look like. And importantly, let us also not forget about that hand washing bit.
Right. Thank you so very much, Dr. Silverkin. Dr. Augustina Angelina Silverkin is a lecturer, Department of Theoretical and Applied Biology, KNUST, and research scientist and virologist at the KCCR. Yes, Kwame Sapong-Asiedu, what will you say in 30 seconds to Ghanaians all over the world who are watching you now? What should they do?
Well, what I would say to Ghanaians, and especially to those who are interested in following, is the fact that this virus is taking us on a tutorial. 7 weeks ago, the WHO advice was that face masks do not impact in any way. Today, it has changed, and you are all wearing face masks. When this disease came, it was said to be a respiratory disease. Today, we know that it causes multiple organ shots and all that, and the treatment protocols have changed drastically. It is not classified strictly as a respiratory disease. What it means is that if you live in a fool's paradise that the virus is not here, and that you don't do the basics, which requires you from not contracting the virus in the first place, you are turning yourself into an experimental animal on which these new avenues of health will be found, whether because now we know it even affects the clotting of blood. It does so many things. So you are going to be the guinea pig from which we would learn.
Thank you.
I don't want any Ghanaian to be a guinea pig. So please wash your hands and wear your mask.
Thank you so very much, Kwame Sapong-Asiedu. And before I take my very final words from the gentleman in the studio, let me remember to say happy birthday to Santok Singh, former manager of this very channel of Multi TV, and also happy birthday to King Ramsey Kweku Bako. This is from your mom, Aisha Bako, and all your siblings, Princess Fathia Ama Bako and Roy Kason Kofi Bako. Right. So, Doc, in some 30 seconds, what will be your message? We always do that before we close the show.
Well, I think that we are at a very critical point in this fight against the pandemic, and that for Ghanaians generally, we should begin to change some of our behavioral attitudes towards the preventive measures that my colleagues have also enumerated and the state has been championing.
Thank you very much.
We should ensure that we stick to the measures and
thank you very much. Dr. Justice Youngson. Yes, Dr. Patrick Aboagye.
Yeah, thank you. I think I align myself with everything that has been said, just to say that the health sector is ready to ramp up our efforts to make sure we need the people to be with us. We need people to have their change, and we want to use the opportunity to strengthen our system so that we'll be ready and be able to offer
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And the show has been brought to you by Consolidated Bank. We stand with you, MTN, everywhere you go. Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. Ashasi University, educating ethical entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. And Prostat 60 for prostate health management and immune support. Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini, and thank you as always. My outfit is by Latida. Have a good afternoon.